Our next speaker will be Tricia Tugati from Fisheries and Oceans Canada, and she's going to give us a talk about Lake Erie aquatic invasive species.
Hi, I'm Tricia. I'm a biologist with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, part of the AIS program based out of Burlington, Ontario. And like mentioned, I'm here to present on surveillance efforts in the Lake Erie Basin for novel aquatic invasive species. A bulk of this presentation was prepared by Kristen Town from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, who was unfortunately unable to attend the meeting this week. So I want to start off with this map of Lake Erie Basin, and we like to include the Huron-Erie corridor, as we call it, all the way up to Lake St. Clair. And as you can see, all the colored dots correspond to different gear types that we use in our surveillance efforts and our early detection monitoring for aquatic invasive species. And as you can see, there's two halves of the pie up on the screen here, because this is really a binational effort in that we have DFO's AIS program doing surveillance for Lake Erie, and then of course U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And we employ a variety of different traditional gear types, everything from electrofishing to trammels and gills and seines. And I think both programs are their prioritization of sites throughout Lake Erie are really kind of informed by different things. For U.S. Fish and Wildlife, their effort is really allocated based on vector risk analysis that was performed to determine, what are the sites that have the highest likelihood of introduction of new AIS, and this is based on things like shipping pathways or, a fishery nearby that attracts a large amount of people or more populous cities. Whereas our AIS program, the work we do in the Lake Erie Basin is really informed by our invasive carp program, in which we look for suitable spawning tributaries for invasive carp. Either way, as you can see, both programs are really positioned well to give a fair amount of effort in the Lake Erie Basin. This covers about 1,600 sites in 36 unique locations or tributaries across the basin, and to be in a position to detect any new aquatic invasive species. This is just the breakdown of that gear type. So both agencies heavily favor electrofishing in their methods when we're looking and doing our EDM or early detection monitoring programs. And you can see fyke nets and trammels and gills are quite popular, along with combination gear types in which we employ electrofishing with something like a gill net or a trammel. And the whole suite of the traditional gear types here are really aimed at capturing all different life stages of fish species, but then also different size fish species. Our combined catch summary between the two agencies, and this is covering 2024, the 2024 field season, about almost 127,000 fish captured, fish in hand, through our EDM programs, and of that, over 10,000 were non-native species. 105 species were captured, encapsulating this amount of fish, and 26 were non-native. No new species were captured, but two species of note, which I will discuss, the western mosquito fish and a hybrid striped bass. We don't consider those ones new because, as you'll see, those have been captured in USGS's NAS database in historical records. So, as I said, western mosquito fish, so this was caught in Sandusky and Maumee in 2024. So in the Maumee, 2 fish at 2 sites, and I believe these sites were captured. This site was something of a repeat from 2023, and that they've captured this fish here prior, and then in Sandusky, the 8 fish at 3 sites, and this was waters never sampled before, and they access this by pushing a raft very upstream through backwaters and through log jams. So just historically in the Maumee, it has been captured before, but quite a while ago in 47, 80, and 81, all cited from literature. And then Sandusky, as I said, captured 12 fish in one site by UT. And then we have the hybrid striped bass, or what we commonly know as the whiteper. So one individual captured on the U.S. side at Maggie Marsh by commercial fishermen in a trap net. And then also on the Canadian side in Port Burwell by a commercial fisherman again. And these are fertile hybrids actually that are capable of back crossing with native white bass. And here's some notable plant detections. So we have floating primrose willow. This is a rooted floating plant. It can shade native aquatic plant species and reduce biodiversity, impede water flow. So this was incidentally observed in September of 2024, reported to ODNR. And as you can see, there is no prior observation of floating primrose before in this area. You can see that historically on the Canadian side it's kind of near more Detroit and Cedar. So Michigan, this was reported in Michigan waters of Maumee Bay, but still very close to the Ohio border. And yeah, I believe there was possible treatment of this floating primrose. I believe they may have sprayed this one. And then we have water lettuce, and again, incidentally observed in November of 2024. And this was reported in a small tributary off Sandusky Bay. No previous reports as well. As you can see, it's quite prolific in the St. Clair River area instead. So we're going to get into some eDNA sampling that was performed in 2024 field season. So you can see there's 3 different markers on there, one for silver carp, one for big head carp, and then one that's called the invasive carp marker, which really just targets the Hypothalamicus genus, so it could detect either big head or silver carp. And across Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York, really the 3 detections were localized to Sandusky and Maumee. So for the Maumee River, there was an April and a September sampling event, and this is part of that routine eDNA sampling that U.S. Fish and Wildlife does employ. And so they did have that positive detection of an invasive carp marker, as you can see in that white box there. And the September sampling event, 264 samples. There was a contamination for one of them, so 45 of those samples were discarded, but 0 positive detections from that follow-up. And important to note, of course, in 2024, no silver or big head were captured during the field season. And then if we move to Sandusky, we have the silver carp and big head carp markers that were positive detections. So the April, May, and September were, again, routine eDNA sampling performed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And November, once that was forwarded to the state agencies, the November sampling event was really at the request to confirm those detections to see if there would be another positive detections for these 2 species. Fortunately, there was none, and 0 positive detections for Sandusky, and again, no big head or silver captured in these waters. And that's just showing you where, in April, where that silver carp detection was, and then in September, where that big head carp detection was, and then, of course, in November, no detection. So this this 2023 eDNA metabarcoding pilot study was underway by U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and they chose Presqu'île Bay for this study because it's as close to a closed system on Lake Erie that you can find. And in doing so, this pilot study was trying to flesh out, an eDNA metabarcoding methodology that could be employed in their EDM program on a year-to-year basis. So their sampling objectives were really to develop the methodology, but then also compare it to traditional sampling gears in order to get a sense of how it would fare if they were to roll it out into their EDM program. So in doing so, they looked at two different factors, the species richness and fish communities, and they looked at various factors, point versus transect sampling, single versus triplicate, onshore versus offshore, and then of course comparison to the traditional gear types. So the results of this study really helped inform their metabarcoding methodology, and seeing that there was no significant difference between a few of those factors, but there was a significantly higher difference for onshore sampling, and then higher species richness in using eDNA versus the traditional gears. And then when we look at fish communities, we are seeing that significant difference with regards to eDNA and looking at onshore versus offshore and the comparison to traditional gear types. The results and the nuances and details of the study are something that you can reach out to Kristen Town about. It is quite a big study that they did, so if you're interested, please follow up. And then in 2024 of last year, they did the same metabarcoding study, but this time doing it in the Detroit River system. And they chose Detroit because it's the complete polar opposite of something like Presqu'île Bay, which is a closed system. They wanted something as open as possible to take into account all of the different factors of flow and velocity and depth in their eDNA sampling. So they wanted to look at estimated sample size, and then again look at species richness and fish communities in this pilot study. And these results are currently underway for analysis. So for 2025, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, here's their tentative sampling plans. They're actually hoping to roll out now their eDNA metabarcoding work and to incorporate it as one of their tools in their EDM program. And of course, they're going to employ the variety of the different traditional gear types as well across Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. But then you'll note that Detroit River and Buffalo Harbor, Buffalo River, and Upper Niagara River will be employing that use of that eDNA metabarcoding methodology that they were fleshing out in previous years. And then for DFO, our 2025 sampling plans, this is with regards to our traditional gear types. So again, as I said, our approach is a little different in that we're not doing broad spectrum monitoring per se, but our prioritization of our sites in Lake Erie are informed by invasive carp and their habitat suitability preferences. So we have these standardized sites across Lake Erie Basin that we visit on a year-to-year basis. We're still finalizing our field plans ourselves, but we can expect to visit these tributaries again in 2025 with heavier emphasis on where there are spawning grass carp in the States, which is Sandusky and Maumee. And so this is going to cover all of our traditional gear types, as I said, but we are looking at eDNA as well. We're piloting various methodologies, and that's something that we partner with the province and First Nations with. So I'll take any questions now. I've put Kristen Town's contact up there if you'd like to follow up with anything, and mine as well. Thank you.